Jason and John and I will just introduce ourselves, and then I'll talk through what we are expecting from the session, and then it would be really useful just if you wouldn't mind introducing yourselves as well. So I'm Leslie English. I'm one of the faculty librarians supporting FST, and my focus is on teaching and learning. And John is the other half of the faculty pair. John, do you want to introduce yourself?
I'm Barbuck. I'm a faculty librarian as well for FST, but I work with content. And a lot of what I do is working with resource lists and Leganto, which is our system for digital resource lists. So if you did want any help with that, you're usually sent through to me, and I try to help where I can.
Thanks, John. Jason, do you want to introduce yourself?
Yeah. My name's Jason Hancocks. I'm the Maths and Stats Learning Developer for FST and FHM. So our team provides maths support across the university for undergraduates in terms of in a bunch of various ways that I'll describe in more detail later.
Thanks, Jason. Louise isn't able to be with us today, so I'm going to talk through later how Louise can support staff and students with learning development. So if I just run through what we're going to do, and then like I said, it'd be really nice to hear from you. I'll come back to the Padlet in a moment because we did have a couple of questions on the Padlet that we're going to return to. So the structure of the session is you'll hear from the three of us. So John will start and he's going to talk about making readings digital. So he's going to touch on our Leganto reading list system, digitisation, and trying to make sure that students can access digital copies of content. I'll talk about student inductions and refreshers in using the digital library, and I think this really became apparent how important it was as we went into lockdown and we had a lot of students really unsure of how to access the library online. So I'll talk about what I can offer in terms of support for students' inductions. Then John and I will both talk about how you can signpost to support from ourselves in terms of finding, evaluating information, referencing, using reference management software. And then I'll talk briefly for Louise about learning development, including English language support, which is offered by Dr. Helen Hargreaves, who's one of the learning development team. And then you'll hear from Jason, who'll talk about maths and stats activities available to students, and then we'll do a So thanks for introducing yourselves. So John's going to start, and John's got some slides that he's going to talk through. I have made these slides available on the FST library Moodle site, so I'll put that link into the chat in a minute as John's talking. So I'll pass you over to John.
Yes, I'm going to talk to you a little bit, mainly about making readings digital, why you would want to do this, and possibly some of the things you've got to be aware of at the moment when you're actually making your readings digital, because it's not going to be quite the same as it was every year, which is you can just go and put everything you want into a reading list and the library does its magic, because we have to be a bit more aware of what we can and cannot make digital at the moment. The aim is hopefully to make a reading list which are all digital, so you don't have to be on campus or available to the library service where we keep a lot of our paper books to actually get access to all of your resources. So benefits of digital readings. So why are we as the librarians really concerned about digital readings? The main reason we do this is we don't actually know when books are added to reading lists. It'd be great if we had some sort of psychic special skill, or we started breaking into people's offices just to find out what the readings are for the next year. The problem is we don't know that unless we're told, and some people don't tell us. So often what happens is we don't know until we don't have enough books on our shelves, and we don't like doing that. We like to make sure we've got enough resources. If you have a digital reading list, we can check it. We know when you've updated that, and then we can look at what you've added and make sure that we have them available. It also allows us to manage the shift from the paper to the electronic. We're aiming digital by default. That means we want to make sure that we have whatever we can in digital primarily. But we can't buy everything. We can't just blindly buy things. So we have to know what the most important things for us to purchase are. Another reason, increased student satisfaction. Students really like digital reading lists. They find them really useful, and because they link directly to the full text, it saves them so much time. It also allows us to catch the older items and recommend newer titles. Sometimes some of the reading lists have older items on them, and we want to make sure we can find those and maybe recommend a newer title if, for instance, it is getting a little bit older. It also tells us when we want to buy a new edition, and then we can recommend the new edition to actually improve teaching. And most importantly, it also allows us to warn you when a new essential item that you really need access to for an upcoming course is actually unavailable in the digital version. Not all books are available as digital. Publishers can be a little bit naughty maybe, and they want every student to buy the book. They make more money that way, and therefore they sometimes make the books unavailable for us to purchase as a digital copy. And you don't want that to be a sudden surprise that you put a £200 or £300 text on a reading list, and then suddenly we can't get the digital copy and all the students have to go and buy that. So some features of the digital reading list. Okay, I'm going to show you these, but first, 3 key features. Okay, you can add items to the reading list. It's literally drag and drop. That's brilliant. You drag it, you drop it, you're sorted. A really good button I'm just about to show you when I actually create a little reading list is you can actually send it to us to review. Once you've finished your lists in our reading list systems, you can actually send it to the library and we'll have a look through it. We have a few rules and we'll talk to you about what you can do to make sure that we know how to manage your reading list. When you've finished a list, you click a button and it sends it through to the library to review. And you can also tag all the items. And this is probably the third most important thing you can do. We need to know how important each item is for teaching. We can't deal with a reading list which is just lots and lots of items. But if we know how important things are, we can allocate budgets and we can make sure that items are digitized so that you will always have the digital versions available to your students. So what I'll do is I'll just share my screen. There you go. So this is our reading list system here, and this is Leganto. If you've met this before, it's quite a simple system. But what you can do is you can choose lists. I'm going to choose one of my lists so I don't mess up someone else's. So if I go to my lists here, and I choose this one, which I use to support various projects. Here we go. So this is one of the reading lists. This is a standalone list, so I can mess with it, and I'm not going to break someone else's list. Okay, while we wait that load, I'll show you. Where will you find these resource lists? You can actually go to the software automatically, but if you look in your Moodle pages, you'll often find this little grayed out box at the top of your Moodle page. That is actually a link which will directly set up your Moodle, your resource lists for each module. This will save you time. You can, however, add a resource list automatically by add an activity or resource. Here we go. There we go. You can add a resource list there. Or you can also just add a standalone list, and I'll talk to you about that. There we go. So this is the Declin Psychology general reading. I just chose a random one. As you'll see here, you get some options. Okay. As I said, the easiest thing to do is the Add Items button. So that's what you want to do. And what you can do is just put any book in there. For instance, if I put in something good. The best thing about this is it actually searches through the library's resources. So it will actually pull off one search rather than you having to put anything in itself. There's a book called Earth Science. What you can do is actually choose whether available full text online, items which are only available in the digital, or all the resources. The best thing about that is you want it, you just drag and drop it over. There we go. Over there. We won't do it to their reading list because they might not enjoy it, but you can just drag and drop it over. It's extremely simple. I mentioned the other really important button is that you can create little categories. You can make them look quite readable. But that button there, the library review button, what that does is that will then, if I adjusted the list, it would send it through to the library to have a look at. Therefore, we'll be able to see you've added some new resources to the list, and we can actually investigate whether we have enough copies of the books, we have the books in a digital version. And finally, if I just click on one of these, we have the option for tagging.
John, while it's doing that, Alison's just got a question, and she said, could you scroll down and show us where it parked itself? It doesn't automatically put itself in alphabetical order. So if you add to the list, where does it put it?
It'll put it usually at the bottom. You can drag and drop it to wherever you want. You can actually just put it in there. If you drag and drop it over, it will go wherever you've put it. So if you've got a specific category, it'll actually just drop it on. However, you have to be careful with very large lists. It can sometimes get a bit unwieldy, and it's being a little bit slow there. So there you go. So it's loaded that up, and you can add a tag to the item here. It should open up the tag list here. There we go. And it gives us the option of essential, recommended, or optional. I'm going to bring in why this is really important to tag the items in a minute. What I'll do, though, is just remove that because it's being a bit on the slow side. And so I'll just move that. There you go. So I mentioned tagging. Okay, this is what's actually quite important. And so I really, really want to stress how important this is this year. Okay, that reading list I showed you, it wasn't tagged. They hadn't tagged it. And the problem for us is everything looks the same to us. Some of us are subject specialists and some of us are not. And we don't know what you want to be your key texts. What you can do, however, is just tag everything, either essential, recommended, or optional. Essential is important. If you tag it essential, we will make sure that whatever chapters or papers or items you put in as essential, we'll make sure that we can find a digital copy. We'll make sure there are enough copies, and we will buy books even just to digitize. So that will mean that we will actually really pull the stops out to get digital copies for you because we know that these are essential items. Okay. However, we also have the options of recommended and optional. If you put something down as recommended or optional, we won't actually go out and do this. In the past, maybe we would have bought digital copies, but at the moment, we're not. So if you can choose any recommended and optional items of things we already hold in the digital in the library, just come and use those instead. Of course, there might be recommended or optional items. You say, actually, I don't want this to be essential, but we want it to be recommended. Have a talk to one of your faculty librarians and explain about this, and we'll see what we can do about getting it in the digital. But they're the rules that the library sits by whether we provide a digital copy. Essential, you get the digital version. Recommended or optional, we tend not to. So if you find you've got a lot of recommended items, for instance, you're giving students the options to choose from 10 different articles, maybe to write a piece of work about, try and make sure those 10 articles are pulled from our digital resources because we're not going to digitize those. The question, though, is the argument everyone says is the library should buy everything in digital. Why are we not? Sadly, unfortunately, we can't do this. Electronic textbooks, they can often be 20 times the price of a paper book. And if you're only using, for instance, one page of that book, and we need to make it available to a whole cohort of students, it can be extremely expensive. So we tend to say, can you just choose a few essential items? These are the really key textbooks, which are constantly going to be referred to, and then look to our present holdings for all the additional materials. Again, the way we got around this in the past was the library always kept, if you notice, we've still got lots of books in the library. We haven't gone and got all the books and gone, we'll have digital everything. If we'd have done that, we wouldn't have had any money left. So what we do is we actually have a lot of paper books still in the library, large amounts of paper books where the digital copies are not affordable. Sadly, you can imagine that might not necessarily be the shrewdest plan to do that this year. So it might not be, the students might not for some reasons have access to that. Any students which are shielding might find it difficult to come in to the library. Okay, adding items manually. There are other things you can do. What I'll do is I'll do some of the features at the end and I'll run through these now just to make sure we don't have any problems. So things you can do, okay, add items manually. Some of the resources are going to be completely not in our catalogue. What you can do is you can add items manually. So things like blogs, YouTube videos, or websites. Perhaps you want to add a new book, a book we haven't got, manually add it. However, remember that if you put that as an essential text, we will attempt to get the digital versions of that. If you put that as a recommended text, we won't do that. So you have a book which you really are going to use as a core text. We don't have it, put it in, create a reference for it manually and set it as essential. And we'll see, we'll do our best to get the digital copies of that. One thing to mention, and it's definitely something to remember, but maybe not to dwell on, is something we call durable links. You can actually link to resources from this, websites, blogs, lots and lots of fantastic YouTube videos. And you might be considering using those and making really vibrant reading lists. And because it's digital, link straight out to them. Please be aware of the links that are in the title bar sometimes are not necessarily the correct links. What you need to do is use what's called a durable link. You'll find on the page of most of these websites there's the option to link or share. That is a link which actually works properly. I just wanted to mention that. You can come and look at this later or ask one of the faculty librarians and we'll show you how to do this. What this means is the link is always be available. And we've actually got a little how-to on that, and there's a link on the slide. The way around this is just to double check your reading lists just before, say, a day or a few days before it's actually needed in anger, and then you can see if you've had any broken links. You do it a few times, make a mistake, you go, oh, but then you find the durable links and you'll use them from then on. It's got these really fantastic features as well for adding a bit of extra flair. You can add notes. This is something I'm definitely going to show you. Just got the time. You can add little notes to reading lists. These direct students to specific chapters or why they would want to consider reading an optional title. You can add a little bit of information about each item on the reading lists. So it really becomes more of a narrative piece of work. You can also add some fantastic little images for icons. So say you've got a material like a magazine or a blog and you want to link out to it, you get a very boring icon. You can actually add nice little icons using that. So it actually creates a really pretty looking reading list as well. Something you look at and you go, oh, fantastic. And there's also, you can create standalone links. You don't need to link through to Moodle. You can create your own standalone link. These could be for group exercises, special events, or any groups which you want to actually support. Then you can have all the resources on there without having to create a whole Moodle page for it. If you feel that that might be a little bit overkill, you can then create just a simple reading list and maybe a little bit of a few public notes. For instance, if you've got a journal club, you want to go and have a group of students and assign them individual work to do, individual readings, you can create a little list for that. This makes it really useful. So about the digitisation, I mentioned about that. Again, you can request digitizations of items. For instance, if you've already got a reading list, we have a link there. If you click on that, go to our digitizing contents page, you get a really nice resource request form. You can actually request an item. And what we'll do is we'll look at your reading list if it's in the digital format, and we'll look at it and we'll see which is your essential item. You go and request an item, we'll say, oh, was it essential? And then we'll digitize for it. So if you, for instance, already have a reading list and it's got a lot of paper items on you need digitizing, fill that out. We will go and do our best to find them. If we can't find the digital versions, you'll usually be sent along to the faculty librarian where we can explain why. And we can say, maybe recommend an alternative resource, because again, it might be some of the paper resources are not available, unfortunately. You can also explain why it's absolutely essential, and therefore we can make it essential and make a case to see if we can actually find it digitized. Some of the requests for digital resources can actually, again, be very, very expensive. So we have to just make sure that, you know, the reading lists are affordable and they're all digital. Just to remind you, though, one thing that's really good is if you do create a new reading list and you do the Centre Library or Library Review with an essential tag, they're the ones that we're going to maximize the digital versions of. But just an important note, is the item actually essential? We just can't buy everything. I'm saying this because a lot of people are going, brilliant, what I'll do is I'll make everything on my reading list essential. We might actually give you a quick email about that, because we can't purchase everything and budgets are very night. There is a limited amount we can spend on our resources. And please check what we've already held, because most people we've said this to goes like, just check our present holdings, see what we've got. Everyone is always very prepared for a very pleasant surprise, what we actually already have, usually the new editions. I'd say half the problems with the people not getting digital copies is actually that we've got the new edition in the digital, in the library, and they've just missed the latest edition. So definitely have a look at what we already hold. Okay, so further help, I'm going to give you a little tour, just a few of the other features of a reading list, but two things you can do. If you click on that there, we've got actually a LibGuide all about creating resource lists. What you can do is just go on that and it talks you through maybe how to create a great resource list, styling, that sort of thing. Also, contact your faculty librarians. A lot of what we do is creating resource lists. We'll help you create them. The aim is always to kind of encourage you to update your own reading law resource lists, but we're perfectly happy to get you going, to get you started, to create a little framework for you, and then you can go and populate it with whatever you want. So if I'm going to try this again, I'm going to see if I can share my screen. Let's see if speed up a bit. Here we go. Oh, it's looking a bit faster now. You'll find links. If you want to just go straight into Leganto, you'll find the link on the resource, the guide for this that I linked to at the end. So if we choose one, which I think is especially good, for instance, LEC 320, I think remember this one's very good. A newer version of this list exists. Fantastic. I'm a bit of a collector of fantastic reading lists, and I have to say that LEC does tend to have some very nice reading lists. Usually they're very well narrated. So if I'm using anyone as an example here, that's fantastic. So here we go. So this reading list, which is an older one, as you'll see, this one, Black Reason, Critique of Black Reason, it's been marked as essential. As you'll see, we've got the ebook version of that. So that one we know is essential. So it's been sent to the library. We've made sure we've got them. You see the notice that got the word complete there. They've all been checked. Their availability has been checked. The essential items, okay, will be digitized. As you'll see here, these ones have not yet, but this one is a list which was before we actually needed to digitize absolutely everything. But what we would do, for instance, if we go and have a look at this one here. Okay, just to say, yep, there we go, it's loaded up now. There's the add items button. That's the other key element you're probably going to want to do. So you can create items there and just fill these out. I just ask you that if you do use that button, make sure it's fully filled out because it just helps the students to have better references. And then you can add them. Once you start using it, you'll find it's really, really easy. And if you do create a reading list, have any problems with it, you can just give one of the faculty librarians, contact us, and what we'll do is we'll just make sure that we can help you, maybe give you a rundown one-to-one on how to actually create your reading lists. The key fantastic element of this is these roll over every year. So what you'll do is when you start to do your reading list for your next year, you're not starting from scratch. These will be available for you, and all you need to do is do a quick update on it. So it takes a bit of time to create a reading list initially, but then it's always available and it will constantly be there year on year on year, saving you a lot of time. Okay, I'll just stop sharing now. Okay. Oh, fantastic. There we go. Oh, sorry about the poor internet connection there. But again, I encourage you just have a chat with us and we'll be able to show you all these fantastic features. We'll show you how to make sure that we can get your digitized copies available as well. Okay.
So there's a couple, some comments and a question in the chat, John.
Fantastic.
Can you see chat now? And
Yeah.
I just wondered as well, while people are having, is there any other questions that maybe people want to unmute before we move on from resources?
Okay. It was deemed to be spoon feeding. Yes, you're quite right. That is very true. I would argue against it. Yes, it is a little bit over simple, but I would also argue that some of the reading lists we've seen, I believe some of the departments were providing photocopied resource lists this year, I noticed. I've no idea where they found it was photocopied about 20 times. So unfortunately this, although it does seem very, very easy, it is a lot more usable and it creates a parity of resource lists so students can go between lecturers and you get the same system. They know what they're dealing with. And to be honest, it's more difficult than it should be sometimes to get electronic resources. So it does make it a bit easier.
Headers on these things, or are they standard?
You can't put your own headers. You can add a little bit of text underneath the headers for adding subject items, a little bit of explanatory text. You can do that. They tend not to be themable, not as much as Moodle is. They always look very much the same. They have a university style to each one, but you can add text, you can add comments, you can add even chat next to the side of each of the reading lists so students can talk about the reading list. Maybe you don't want that on your main one, but if you have small group reading lists, you can do that to it. Most people find that just by adding that little bit of extra text, it's enough customization to make it a really useful reading list. Oh, I'll just check if there's no more comments here we've missed. Here we go. Okay. No, I think that's everything. Oh, easiest way to drag and drop. Oh yeah, it's drag and drop. You just literally drag and drop it. But if you find the drag and drop difficult, you can click on each item and then you have an add button on it. So there's two options. Sometimes some people have very slow computers, the drag and dropping is a little bit janky. Like for instance, you saw that my computer at the moment is suffering and the internet connection is a bit slow today. So it's really slow for me. While on campus, it's absolutely fine. Maybe I'm going to ask for another computer. So if you do find it's difficult, you can just click add. Do we need to identify any essential items on reading lists that currently land in eVersion? Okay, yes. If you already have a resource list and you haven't put essential items and you want to make sure we've got digital copies, okay, tag them essential and then send to library. And what we'll do is we'll check there's a digital copy. Please, if you're going to contact people, just remind them, can you make sure that everything you have on your resource list is digital, ongoing? Essential items will be arranged by the library as digital. If you want to go the belt and braces, essential item, send it to the library, and then also send a request in using that form. And what we'll do is that will just extra remind us, double check, get a digital version sorted, and our team here will actually try and arrange the digital versions for you. Of course, it doesn't mean we will definitely get them, but it definitely means that you won't start a new year and able to have access to a resource. Okay, is it possible to digitize whole items, a short graphic novel? There is graphic novels is a bit more trickier. We've got a librarian who will be able to advise you on that. So if you've got any questions, just ask. A short graphic novel, we could probably get a digital copy, like an ebook version of that, if possible. We're limited to what we can. It's a certain percentage of books or a chapter. And we're not supposed to make like digital resource lists almost into digital textbooks. But in German, a graphic novel. So
I've checked to see if it's available, John. It's not. So okay. I mean, you can buy copies, but
yeah. The best thing to do is put a request in, explain what it is, and we'll try our very best to find it.
Thank you.
It can be we can digitize a certain amount of it. For instance, there's a specific part, the most important part of that, we might be able to digitize that. Problem with it, it's art as well as text. It makes it a bit more tricky. But there's always a way around these, and we'll try our best to find a way.
I'm just going to briefly talk about what we can offer in terms of supporting students in navigating the digital library and the services that are available to them. And like I said right at the start, we did realise as soon as we went into lockdown that a lot of students who may be campus based were struggling to access our digital resources, unaware of how to, a lot of students thought they had to access us through the VPN. So there was quite a lot of user education going on in that first few months. So what we're offering, and this may vary slightly across faculties, although for those of you in FAS, Paul Newman is the teaching and learning librarian for FAS, so it really worth contacting Paul. But I'm at the moment preparing for next term in terms of induction and refresher sessions for students. So those will include, often in the welcome week or those first few weeks of term, I would do a lecture theatre 10 to 20 minute slot with the basics of using the library. So while I'm not going to be doing any face-to-face teaching, I'm preparing short videos and other resources that can be either embedded into Moodle or Teams live sessions that you may want to book in, so I can prepare those for the start of term. So things like using the library resources, using OneSearch, perhaps using the subject guides to be able to find subject specific library resources. Referencing support, and perhaps for students who are further on in the course, supporting using reference management tools such as EndNote Desktop and EndNote Web. And the options really that I'm offering at the moment, and again I'm sure that this is across with Paul in FAS as well, is that you can see on the slide there that purely asynchronous, where I'll be doing a Panopto recording and can include some embedded activities where I might say stop the video now and go and search for a topic in OneSearch. The option 2 is to do that recording but also have either a discussion forum in Moodle, so that I can say I'll be available at certain times in a week and answer any questions, or maybe perhaps set some small activities in the forum. Or the recording could be followed by a live Q&A session via Teams. Or the other option is purely to do a live workshop delivered via Teams. So last term we did quite a few of those that were usually about an hour in length, and used a work sort of activity book to sit alongside those sessions, so students could be working in OneSearch and looking at the subject guide as we were delivering the sessions. So if any of those sound useful, and you really, that you're thinking about making sure the students can access library resources, please do get in touch with me. I've got my email on the screen, or I'm available via chat as well. We also have, I'm just going to go on to the next slide, we also have a number of online self-directed study resources, and we are creating more of those, as you can imagine, at the moment. So students and staff can enrol on the Library Skills for Science and Technology Moodle, and that's got some resources in there that they can access. We've got on the library homepage a Learn Independently section, which has a number of learning development and faculty librarian resources, so information literacy, academic writing, maths and stats tutorials that students can work through in their own time. I'm just preparing a sort of a welcome to the library essentials tutorial that students can work through, and that will be ready by the end of the month. And we also have a library YouTube channel. So at the start of lockdown, we did the Accessing the Digital Library Top Tips playlist. So things like accessing theses and dissertations online, finding your subject guide. There's about 10 in the series, and we also have the EndNote Desktop video tutorial. And the image there, there's a referencing tutorial and a plagiarism tutorial, and I've put the embed codes for those in the Moodle site. So if you want to embed those onto your Moodle, just go along to that site and you can get the embed code. Alison, I can see you've got your hand up. Do you want to ask a question now?
I've only done this, sorry, because I've got some bug at the moment, which is in the bottom right hand of my screen, and they're looking at it for me tomorrow, so I can't actually put in anything in the chat at the moment. This all sounds very exciting. Thank you very much. I will go and check, but is there also one on using databases like the MLA and the Web of Science, etc.? Is there a little Panopto thing on that yet?
I think one of my colleagues, let me just write that down. I think Tanya, who is one of our medical librarians, has done a Web of Science. Again, I would contact Paul if there is and it's something we are wanting to have some tutorials for a lot of our databases, and it's something that's a work in progress. But I think if there's specific ones that you need quite early on, I would contact Paul in the first instance, and actually between a team we could look at who could create, because it'll only need to be fairly short videos, wouldn't they, really, to be embedded. So it would be really handy if we're getting a drive from the departments for us to know what the priorities are. Right. So yeah, if that's so what was, let me just make a note. So Web of Science was one. Was the
MLA, Modern Languages Association of America. Yeah, I mean, they should play with them. I always do a session in person with the postgrads in particular, but if there's stuff that they can, have little taster and then get started, all the better. But I'll have a look myself and see if it's already there. Already excited about the fact that the theses and dissertations are, via the Digital Library Top Tips So I'll go and have a look there.
Yeah, that actually, when we published that or shared it on social media, that was a really popular one, and we didn't realise actually sometimes we think we know what students want, and actually some of those were our frontline staff were saying they've got loads of inquiries about accessing theses, what can we do? So yeah, please let us know if there's anything you need. Okay, let me just go on. So before we go on to the learning developers, and I'll keep an eye on the time, this is really about signposting students to support via John and I, so the faculty librarians for FST, but it's the same across the faculties. So just a brief overview of what we can support students with: finding and evaluating information, using OneSearch, using subject databases, perhaps using newspaper databases and theses, and like Ethos for the British Library's theses database. We can support students if they get going into the final year and or postgraduate and they're writing the dissertation, that we can support them with carrying out the literature review, and also for systematic literature searching. So while that's usually been in health and medicine, I know John's done a lot of support for psychology this last term. And also I mentioned referencing, but we can support students if they need some guidance in referencing. We've got such a lot of different referencing styles that we lead students into, so we can support with that, and also using the EndNote desktop and EndNote online. So if you want to direct students to us, you've got the faculty librarians email address, and that goes to all of the faculty librarians, or again through chat, and students can go online to the library webpage and book an online appointment. So all of our appointments are online at the moment, but they can choose their librarian and choose a slot through there. So, and then they'll automatically get a Teams link. So it's quite seamless, the ability to do that right now. Okay, does anyone have any questions on that section on supporting students with using the library? Okay, so again, this is Louise, who would be is the learning developer for FST, and I do some sessions for her. I support her in that, but she's the main contact. So she's not unable to be here today. So if I run through a couple of slides. So some of you may have known Robert Blake. Robert Blake and Louise were a job share, but Louise is now going to be full-time from September in this role. She offers writing consultations, which are available to all levels of students, those throughout the year. So she'll often find that students self-refer, so it's not a remedial service at all. It's often students are getting good grades, but they just want to push themselves that bit further. Other times she'll get referrals from departments, and in FST, I know Louisa said she gets a lot of referrals from students who may have an SPLD that are referred on to her, so she can support with study skills, time management, and other areas. She offers diagnostic feedback on extracts of writing, on structure and organisation, and use of language. And like I said about managing time, that's often a big area that she supports students with. She doesn't proofread dissertations or chapters, and she always makes that clear from the start. So at the moment, she's taking bookings through her email, but when we come to term, she'll have the ability to book through her Moodle site. So the Learning Development FST Moodle students can self-enroll on, and there are some learning material on there, as well as being able to book appointments through that site. For English language support, Dr. Helen Hargreaves is the learning developer for English for academic purposes across the university. So there is really just one person doing that at the moment, and at the moment her support is available online. So she offers the short courses on various aspects of English for academic studies. She has one-to-ones which are available online, and she does weekly discussion groups for developing spoken English. So again, her Moodle site is up to date. It's got some really good resources on there that students can work through to develop their English for academic purposes. Okay, does anyone have any questions on Helen and Louise's support available? And I would say for FAST, you've got Joanne Wood, and also Helen will support FAST students. You know, Helen's across the board.
Hi again. I'm Jason Hancock. So I'm the learning developer in maths and statistics for FST and FHM. So our team, similar to what Leslie was describing about Louise, we provide sort of additional support across FST. Our team is actually university-wide, but my position is FST, FHM specific. But all the information here, so for example, this form that I'm mentioning and this email address, if, for example, our colleagues who are here from FAS, if any of your students have any queries about maths or stats, they can use the exact same links. So we do a bunch of activities, and I've just put a few highlights here. So at the moment, we're doing a lot of email support. So students have always requested our assistance through email. And previously, what we would have done with those emails is we would have suggested a one-to-one appointment or some other activity that we were doing. But obviously, face-to-face is no longer an option. So email support is taken off a bit more. But we are also doing digital one-to-ones. So we can do video calls, and our team has graphics tablets, so we can write maths and kind of give the whiteboard experience that mathematics really actually requires to work. I intend on doing a drop-in sort of type session, which I'm going to call the digital office hour this term. So I was doing this last academic year as well, but obviously it was face-to-face. I can't do that, so I'm going to improvise some sort of digital solution to that. So that should be fun. And we also do group activities. So brush up your maths and stats. So this is for students who want to either learn or solidify A-level topics of mathematics for any courses that they're doing. And this is, again, university-wide, bookable through LibCal. We do a lot of notifications through Moodle, and most students are automatically signed up, definitely FST and FHM students. We have the boot camp, which is something that we were doing once a term on Saturday. It's not entirely clear what that's going to look like at the moment for the first term, but you know, we've plenty of solutions. We have plenty of experience with online teaching now, and who knows, maybe we'll be allowed to see each other in person by then. Fingers crossed. And we also provide a lot of embedded workshops. So these are kind of extra workshops that we do for specific modules, that have been organized in advance. And that's with mostly sort of the very mathematically inclined programs like maths and physics and engineering at the moment. If anyone has any questions, obviously interrupt me. I'm much better at talking than presenting usually. So here's just some of the things students have said about us. All very nice, and we get very consistently good reviews from our students. So we provide a very kind of bespoke experience that teaches them kind of how to approach mathematics more than just how to do mathematics, and I think they really appreciate that sort of interpersonal relationship that they get from us, and sort of not, what's the word? We're not directly associated with their marking and things like that. So we're kind of impartial, and I think that goes a long way. And yeah, so this last one is just a digital business card. So if you look back at the slides and you think I'd like to message that person, here's the details about what we do. So yeah, again, similar to the situation with Louise in English learning development, students can refer themselves and quite often do, and also members of staff can refer students as they see necessary, and that happens quite a lot as well. So that's about it from me. If anyone has any questions, I'll be here, but I will leave it at that. Thank you.
Hopefully you found the session useful, but you've now got the contacts, and also for FAST you've got Lorna and Paul, so please do contact us over the summer. Like I said, we're all busy preparing as you are, so the earlier we can start preparing sessions, I know Jason you're nodding as well, the better for us as well. So thank you, and we can continue this in the chat afterwards. Okay, thanks then. Bye.